It's Ash from SuperVideos back for another video for The Last of Us on HBO. On this video, we're going to be taking a look at something that was teased at the end of last episode, Season 1, Episode 6, which is most likely gonna be a big part of the final episode of Season 1, and that has to do with Salt Lake City and the storyline from the video game that takes place in Salt Lake City. So stay tuned, we'll be right back to break this down. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. With that said, let's dive right into it. So of course, we did have a scene where Joel and Ellie spotted a map, which the Fireflies obviously set up to put together their next steps and the next location that they're going to be at, and basically their plan was all on the board. And this was obviously at the Colorado State University where the Fireflies used to be before they had to run away for whatever reason. Now, one thing I do want to mention, something very interesting is in the map that you may have missed, we actually see three different routes pointing towards Salt Lake City. We have something coming from what appears to be the eastern of the United States, so probably around Boston or something like that, where we know the Fireflies had pretty large bases around. There's also a line coming from the southwest, which is where California is, and that brings up the question whether that's Catalina Island. For fans of The Last of Us and for players of the video game, you know that Catalina Island plays a big role at the end of part 2 of the video game. So it's definitely a pretty cool Easter egg and a setup for stories that we're probably going to see in season 2 and 3 of The Last of Us. And there's also a line coming from the northwest around where Seattle is. And that's obviously also something that connects to the storyline of part 2 of the video game because Seattle played a pretty pivotal role in The Last of Us Part 2. So these three lines coming towards Salt Lake City are pretty awesome because they're connecting a lot in terms of the stories from Part 2. But let's specifically talk about Salt Lake City. So obviously the fact that Joel and Ellie now know the Fireflies are headed towards Salt Lake City means that their next destination will be Salt Lake City. Now, we still don't know exactly whether we're going to see that story in the next episode or the finale or the final episode of season 1. I'm leaning more towards the final episode of season 1. It's also possible that the lead up to the final episode will feature a bit of the Salt Lake City story as well. Now, looking at the video game, part 1 of the game, we know that there were a few very interesting things that happened during the Salt Lake City story in the video game. We had the bus depot part of the story where a lot of great interactions between Joel and Ellie took place, so we're probably going to see that when we get into the Salt Lake City story. And obviously, we had the pretty awesome giraffe scene, which happened at this time of the story. So that's also something we're probably going to see. And obviously, the other part of it is the St. Mary's Hospital story. That was the biggest part of the Salt Lake City story. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, for non video game fans and players, you're probably asking, what is that? Well, the Fireflies lab is at St. Mary's Hospital. At least it was in the game. And it's gonna be in the TV show as well, because when we see the map that Joel and Ellie were looking at in the episode, we clearly see a mark on the map that says St. Mary's. So that's definitely proving that we're gonna get St. Mary's Hospital story from the game. This is a scene from the game where they're trying to get into the St. Mary's Hospital, where the Fireflies have a huge camp around, and obviously their lab is located inside the hospital. Now, if you followed the channel, you know this already, but as a local who lives in the city where they filmed for The Last of Us, at least when it comes to season 1, I can tell you that they did in fact create a location for St. Mary's Hospital. This is what that looks like in the TV adaptation. In fact, based on some pictures that came out, we see the inside of that particular location, which obviously proves that that's going to be a hospital of some sort. And if we look at the game, we obviously can put two and two together and say that this is the St. Mary's Hospital from the game, which is pretty awesome. And obviously, when we get into that, we're of course going to see Marlene return, and there's going to be some great back and forth between Marlene and Joel here. So that's going to be something to look forward to as well. We obviously know as video game fans what's going to happen at the hospital. So we are definitely intrigued, and we're kind of unsure how it's going to go. And why I say that is because we know that there is a pretty major connection and a pretty major link between the events of the end of Last of Us Part 1 and the storyline of Part 2. So I wonder if there's going to be any sort of Easter eggs or cameos or any sort of direct link to the story of Part 2. Even though we're not getting into the Part 2 story in Season 1, we might get the start of it in Season 1. So that's going to be something that many fans are going to be looking forward to in terms of whether that happens or not and how is it going to come together. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.